what we want to do now is we want to try and get the server to send a game board to our game.html file and to see something happen in response to that. So in order to do that, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to check when someone joins the room on the server side, we're going to check to see whether or not it's the lobby. And if it's not the lobby, then we're going to kick off a new game board. We're going to create a new game board and we're going to sort of kick off the game for them. So in order to do this, first what we need to do is we need to get into the server side code. So that is going to be in server.js. Okay, that's this file over here on the left. And what I want to do is I want to go to the join room function. And I want to scroll down a little bit. And after we do the normal join room stuff, so after we have this log the join room success, what we're going to do is we're going to add another little bit of logic here. And we're going to say that if the room that we just joined is not equal, and I use the double equal sign to make sure it's a string, if it's not equal to lobby, then we're going to call a function that we haven't written yet called send game update. And this will be a generic function that we call whenever we want the game board to be updated and sent to the participants. And the socket that we want to update will be the socket parameter, and we'll send it the room, and we'll just give it a little information about what is happening. And this is the initial update. All right, now when I'm here checking the lobby, see if the room is not the lobby, what I'm doing is I'm really making sure that I'm using the exact same string that I am using in the main.js file when the user first opens up the lobby and finds that they need a room and they join the lobby room. So let me show you what I mean. If I do a split screen and I go to my main function, or my main.js file, and we go to the top, and here's where we select our chat room when we first open the lobby. We can see that the chat room is going to be the parameter on our URL that is associated with game ID, but if it doesn't have anything, then we assume the user is going to the lobby and we have them join a room called lobby. So now this string is really important, that this string lobby matches this string right here. And so you might have had some other name that you were using, but whatever you use, it's got to be consistent, because that is how we detect whether or not a person's starting a game or not. All right, so once they have joined the lobby, we're going to do this send game update. And sending game update means that we're going to have to write that function. So where are we going to write it? We're going to add it down at the bottom of our file. So down here, this is the curly bracket and the parenthesis that's associated with setting up all of our socket code. So we're going to go below this, and we're going to add some new code here. We'll just put a comment in here. And the comment that we're going to put is going to say something along the lines of, this is code related to the game state. And we're going to need to have a variable that keeps track of all the games that are currently being played, and we'll just call that games, and that'll be an array of all the games that are going to be played. It'll be an associative array, so the indices will be strings, not numbers. And then we need to create our function, which we just called, which is send game update, and we're going to be passing it a socket, a game ID, which was the room when we passed it, but we'll receive it and call it the game ID because the semantics of it have changed a little bit, and then the message that we're going to be working with. All right, let's make sure we got the same name here, send game update, no typos, great. So what are the different things that we're going to have to do during the send game update? Well, we're going to have to check to see if a game with game ID already exists. We'll have to do that. And we're going to have to make sure that only 2 people are in the game room, because only 2 people are playing Reversi at one time. So we'll have to kick people out if they're not. And we'll have to say assign this socket a color. And so we'll have to, if this socket isn't white or black yet, if it's a brand new game, then we'll have to assign that socket a color. And then we will send the game update. And then maybe we will check to see if the game is over. And let's see, what else do we have to do? And I think that's it. So we're going to have to fill in those bits of code. What I want to do is I just want to fill in enough code right now that we can see a change on the board. All right, so in order to see a change on the board, the first thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that a board exists. So check to see if a game with the game ID already exists. So we're going to use our standard boilerplate code here, which is that if undefined triple equals type of games sub game ID. So we're looking up the game ID in the games array. And if that, if that is undefined, right? Good. Or it equals 0 or null for some reason, then what we need to do is we need to create it. So the situation here is that no game exists, so make one. All right, and how are we going to make one? Well, let's just log something to our console on our server side so that we know that what's just happened. So we'll say no game exists, boom, creating game ID plus single quote for single quote plus socket.id. So just a little indication on our server console what we're doing. And then we'll say games sub game ID, the thing that is missing right now, is going to equal create new game. That's a function that we're going to have to write as well. Let's assume we've got it. And then that's really all we need to do. Okay, so let's say we have a game. And let's say for the time being, we won't check to see whether 2 people are in the game room. And we won't assign the socket a color. And we will send the game update. So we'll come back here and do a little bit of work here later. We have to write our create new game function. But let's see, what do we want to do? We want to say, like normal, we want to set up our success data payload. And if everything is successful, then that's going to equal something that has a property which is result equals success. And the game that we're sending is going to be games of game ID. So we're just going to send it the full data structure that we haven't actually made yet, but that we will have made. And we will say, we'll send the message, whatever the message was, in case we want to just see it on the console. And then finally, we'll send the ID of the game ID that we're working with here. And that will be our success data. And once we've got that, we're just going to send that game update to everyone that is in this room playing this game. It should be only 2 people at this point. And the message we're going to send will have to be received on the other side. So we're going to have to update main.js to handle this. And we're going to send a game update. And we will send the success data to the clients. Okay. That looks good. So now let's go ahead and write our function to create a new game. This will be a function that will create a new game, state, and return it. All right, and so let's see. Our game is going to consist of all the data that we need in order to keep track of what the current state of the game is. And so what we're going to return is something called new game, and that will be an object. We'll put some properties in it, and the first thing that we'll do is we'll say that the new game dot player white is going to be an object as well. So we'll want to keep track of the socket ID, and we'll want to keep track of the username, and we'll also have a black player. And then we'll go ahead and set the socket information and the username information to be blank. So player underscore white dot socket equals 2 single quotes. And we'll say player white dot username equals 2 single quotes. And then we'll do the same thing with the black player. All right, so when we first start this game, we have no one assigned to white and black. And then because we're going to eventually want to put a timer in, we'll say var d equals new date. That'll get the current date and time. And we'll say new game dot last move time equals d dot get time. All right, so we'll just keep track of that so we see when the last game move was. And since this is the kickoff, it's the kickoff. And we'll say new game whose turn, and that will be equal to white, say because white gets to go first. And then of course we need the state of the game board, and so we'll say new game dot board is going to equal, now this is going to be one big two-dimensional array that has all the elements of our game board. We'll set that up in a second, and we will return our new game, and that will be the end of our function. All right, so our new game board is going to be two-dimensional array, so we will have within our array another array, and what we'll use to specify who owns which space on the board is we'll say a space is empty, a w is white, lowercase w is white, and a lowercase b is black. So let's just start by making a row of 8 elements. That's 1, let's see, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's just check that out for a second, make sure we got it right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Great. And then there are 7 rows, so 7 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So make sure it's 8 by 8, and there's no comma on the last one. And then we need to go in and we need to set up our game board so we have the white and black arrangement that we usually have in the beginning. So put a W in there, and a W in there, and a black piece in there, and a black piece in there. And that should be our starting board, and that should be good to go. All right, so now that'll be how we create our new game. When we send a game update, if there is no game in progress, we'll create a new game. And then we'll set up a data packet, and we'll send that game update to anyone that's in that room. And that should be good. So let's just check to make sure that we don't have any code compile errors over here. We'll do that by trying to run our server locally. This is our server.js file. And we had a problem on 596. 596 is, oh, I had a wrong kind of bracket there. I put a square bracket, it needed to be a curly bracket. Let's check again. Okay, it looks like it's basically running. That's a good sign. So now what we need to do is we need to go into our main.js and write a handler that's going to be able to accept our send update function. So I'm going to switch over into my main.js file, and we'll go down to the bottom of this file in order to do our handler for our function. So let's see. Let's go ahead and put our function here. And what we're going to do is we're going to say socket.on, and we will say game update, which is the message that we're going to receive. And when we get called that, we're going to be sent a payload. That will be our success data, assuming it was successful. And we'll receive it. And the first thing that we can do is I'll grab this console log message, and we'll just place a console log message on the console of the browser that says that game update was called with the given payload. And just to help us read it a little bit, I'll put a \n and \t in there so it goes on a new line. All right, so the first thing that we'll do is we will check for a good board update. This has been our pattern previously as well. And so I'm going to go back up and grab some code here for when things don't go very well. And I will get those 4 lines, and I'll come back to where I was, check for a good board update. So if the payload equals fail, so if for some reason, we haven't seen an example of this in our server yet, but in the future, if we get some sort of failing payload, then what we're going to do is we're going to log that. We'll say console.log payload .message, so the reason why we failed. And in this case, if we failed, what we're going to do is we're going to send the user back to, if the game update failed, we're going to send the user back to the lobby. Right, because this isn't plain. This is something that's gone wrong with the game. So we'll go ahead and set their browser URL equal to window.location.href, and we'll set that equal to lobby, and we'll pass the username since we have it. Lobby username equals single quote plus username, so that'll be the variable, and then we'll return from this function. All right, so that's if it was a good board update, and so now we want to check for a good board in the payload, and we're going to do that by trying to get the board. This is the thing that we're going to use to update. So that's going to equal payload dot game dot board. All right, and then we'll do our JavaScript check to see whether it's defined or not. So if undefined double equals type of board, or for some reason our board is 0 or null, then we will say console.log in single quote internal error received a malformed board update from the server. All right, that will just help us to debug if we run into a situation where we have sent ourselves a bad board. All right, if we haven't sent a bad board, then we want to, we're going to update my color, but since we don't have any color information in this board yet, because we're not assigning colors yet, we'll just leave that blank. And then what we need to do is we need to go through the board one at a time and look at each of the elements, and if it's appropriate, then we're going to change the color of the token on the board. Okay, so this means that we need to keep track of what the previous state of the board was and what the next, and compare it to what the next board is, and if there's a change, we need to animate that change. So I'm going to come up here before the start of this function, and I'm going to create a variable which is the old board. And so when we first start, this old board is going to be a two-dimensional array just like in the server side, but we're not going to know what each of the elements is. So to indicate that, we're going to say that an unknown element has a question mark in it, as opposed to a space, a B, or a W. So we need to make an 8x8 grid of question marks. Count those. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, that's my first row. And there's 8 rows, and it's an array, and I got rid of the comma on the last one. So now we have an old board. That's good to go. And now we come down here, and after we update the color, we want to animate changes to the board. So let's see, to do that, we're going to go through each row and each column. So we're going to need a variable for a row and column. And we're going to have a for loop that goes through each row for row equals 0. And while row is less than 8, we'll do row plus plus, a standard loop. Clean it up a little bit, 2 pluses. All right, and then we'll do the same thing, but instead of row, we'll do column. Can't type. All right, so we'll go through row for each row and for each column, and we will check, we'll say if a board space has changed. All right, so we have lots of different ways in which we can change it. So first of all, we'll just see if it changed at all. So we'll say if old board sub row sub column is not equal to the board that we just received from the server, row sub column, then we know that something has changed, and we will do logic for recognizing the change. So now we'll look at specifics, and we'll say if old board row column equals question mark, so we had a state that was unknown, and the new state, row column, if it's now equal to a space, then we need to put a space on the location of the board at which we've just identified. We go through each space. If it's gone from question mark to space, we need to put an empty element in there. So we'll use jQuery, and we'll say, okay, what are we looking for? We're looking for the element whose ID, so put the hashtag in there, starts with whatever row we're currently on, plus row plus, and then a single quote, and then an underscore, because the ID is a number underscore another number, underscore single quote plus column, and then we will close that. So that'll be our selector, trying to find the element in our table which has the right row and column. And then we'll change the HTML that's located in that element. And what we're going to do is we're going to put the image for the empty square there. So we'll put an image tag where the source is equal to, and I'm intentionally doing double quotes here because double quotes inside single quotes is going to work better. And we'll say that image is going to be in assets, images, empty.gif, assuming that we put that there. And we'll put our alt tag in, and we'll say, call it the empty square. And we should close it out. And is there anything else we have to say about that element? I don't think so. All right, so we had a change. It went from question mark to space, and so we put the empty GIF in that location. All right, let's say it went from question mark to white. Well, let's see. That's going to be copy these down and put an else in front of there. We'll say, well, if it was question mark and now it goes to white, well, now we want to use the empty to white GIF that we have. And it's not an empty square, but it's a white square. So it's question mark to white. Now let's do question mark to black. Question mark to black is going to be empty to black, and then it's going to be a black square. And then let's do space to white. So that's if someone puts something down in the location. So rather than question mark to W, we'll do space to W. And actually, we're going to end up using that same code. So I'm going to grab these 6 lines and put them down here. And we'll say if we go from space or space to white or black, then we'll go from empty to white and empty to black. So very similar code there. All right, and so what if we don't go from space to white or space to black? What if we go from white to space or black to space? That would be an unusual situation, but we'll go ahead and account for it. So I'll grab 2 here, and if we go from white or black to space, then we will just, well, you can either just put empty in there, or you can do white to empty. I'm not sure that I required that of you guys. I'll have to double check the assignment to make sure that I require you to make a white to empty and white to empty and black to empty, and then change the alt so it says empty square and empty square. So white to empty, empty square, black to empty, empty square. Okay. And then finally, we just have to account for black and white switching to the opposite ones. So let's go ahead and grab the last 4 lines. And we'll say if white goes to black and black goes to white, and if white goes to black, then we go white to black GIF, and it ends up being a black square. And then this one becomes black to white, and this becomes a white square. And then finally, if none of those cases happen, then we just have an error condition. And this is when we can use the error GIF that we've created. And we'll say, if none of those things happen, then something went wrong with our logic. And we want to indicate that by putting an error in place. Okay. All right, that looks pretty good for now. We don't have any interactivity in our arrangement. If there's a change, okay, and then we'll close out our, oops, and I did the same thing. I put square brackets up here instead of curly brackets. Let's put curly brackets up there. Come down here. Close out each one of those, okay. And then we're finishing out our socket.on. And so the last thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that now that we've updated our, now that we've taken care of our HTML DOM element changes, we want to make sure that the old board that we're keeping track of is now the board that we just received. And then finally, we should close out our response. And that should be enough for us to see a game update happen. So let's see if we can make that work. So I'm going to close, let's get a new window. All right, get another new window. Let me arrange them as columns. And I will run our local server. And I will open up a localhost page. And I will go into lobby, and Arnold will go into the lobby. And see that Arnold joined the room. That was good. And we'll say Betty joined the lobby. Look at the outcome of our server. Server says Betty joined the lobby. Betty will invite Arnold, and they will play. Arnold will invite Betty, and Arnold will play. They engaged, we kicked over, we got to our new room. So that was good. No game exists, created D52, that's good. So the new game looks like the new game was created, but it doesn't look like we successfully sent our code elements here. So let's see if we have an indication in our console what went wrong. We do have an error on our console. Let's see what we got. It says bore is not defined. I must have had a typo, and it says main.js 320. So let's see. Let's take a look at that. I still have my server running in the background. I just opened a new tab in my terminal page. And this is going to make for a tight screen, but that's okay. Main.js sub 320. Let me open it up a little bit. All right, 320. And there you can see I misspelled board. I did it bore. Just make sure I didn't do it anywhere else. Okay, save that. And let's lay out our page again. Okay, and I will go back one page. I will go back one to get back into our lobby. And wait for everything to settle out. Okay, we'll try the invite again. And we will play. And we kick over into our board, and this time, did I not, maybe I didn't, maybe I've still got my cache cached. All right, there we go, disable cache, sorry. So I want to make sure I get the code that I just saved, so let's go back to the lobby. And let's do our invitation. All right, there we go, great. So we have a nice setup here. Let's see if I can lower this, get a little lower. So our server sent a game update, and we accepted that game update message, and we built out our board according to what the server told us. So this is a good moment to stop, and we can pick up next by adding some interactivity to this game. We're going to add the play token command, so that now that the server is telling the client where the board positions are, the client will tell the server where the client would like to play. So that'll be next. Thank you for your attention.